It's episode 17 of The Boost with my guest, Gabrielle Juliano-Villani, CEO of GJV Consulting and Training. Let's go. All right. Welcome to The Boost, conversations with people promoting mental health. And I couldn't be happier to be here with Gabrielle Juliano-Villani. And she is the founder, CEO of GJV Consulting and Training. And we're going to cover a lot of ground. We've actually been having some fun in the pre-show here, some laughs already. So this is good vibes. We're going to have a good chat. Gabrielle, how are you today?
I am doing good. I'm kind of boiling down here in Florida. I was just telling Steve before, I just got back from a trip to the Oregon coast, which was beautiful. And it was really nice to have some 60-degree weather. But I'm back in Florida near the ocean where I belong.
So you said you don't love the cold, though.
I can't stand the cold. It's actually, I will say this, I do like it for like a week. It's kind of nice to like see the leaves change and a little snow on the ground during Christmas, but I don't miss living in Denver where it snowed for 8 months and I would have to scrape my windshield at 7 a.m., freezing my ass off. I do not miss that at all.
Why not? That sounds delightful.
I know. I really sold it there too.
I do love Denver, but I've only visited. I've never lived there. I've got some good friends in Fort Collins and good friends in Littleton. So I get out there. And then my dad's whole side of the family is from Portland, Oregon. And
Oh,
I do love I love the fall. That's my season. Like, when it gets into winter, yeah, I can deal with it. But I guess I'm kind of fair weather. I've lived a lot in San Diego, and it's like you step out of
oh
your
yeah.
door, and it's like, well, 72 degrees and sunny again. I guess I'll go body surfing again.
And that sounds amazing. I love the fall too. And even in Florida, when it's like hot as hell still, I'm like drinking a pumpkin spice latte because I'm like, I have to. I need to enjoy the fall, even if it's hot.
Yeah, I do that once in a while, and I just can't help but think that I'm addicted to not just coffee, but like a certain experience of coffee. Because yeah, it'll
Yes.
be in the middle of humid, summer in the southeast, and I'm like holding a hot latte. Like I'm like I wilt in the heat. So I'm like, what am
Yep.
I doing carrying a hot beverage right now?
There's something about it. Like I do the same thing. And I actually, one of my like routines is I sit outside by my pool every morning and I have my coffee. And my husband is like, why are you drinking hot coffee when it's 98 degrees? Like I don't know. The way it smells, the way it
Yeah.
feels in my hand, like it needs to be hot.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something about it. We're gonna solve for this by the end of this podcast. Is why when it's hot and humid outside, do we still have hot coffees in the
Mhm.
morning? Maybe it's ritual. There's like a big thing about that. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he does this thing where he just goes for a walk he goes to a coffee shop. Actually, he works from home and he goes and gets a coffee, and so that whole like walk routine for him is like it's his new commute. Like it's his cadence,
Yeah.
because he was realizing he'd get out of bed, kind of get ready for the day, and not feel like he was in work mode yet.
I love that so much. And we'll probably talk about more about this later, but rituals and routines are really important, and that sounds like a good one.
Oh, okay. We're getting into your wheelhouse already. Okay. So before we launch in, there's two things we do just right out of the bat. We do the virtual hug and the shameless plug. So the virtual hug is just a way to start with a moment of gratitude. So tell us somebody or something you're thankful for or grateful for today.
I am grateful for my dog Lucy. She's my coworker. She's taking a nap right now, but I really missed her when I was on this trip last week. I was gone for like 10 days and she's my little buddy and she is one of the things that calms me down and I love being back in my office and having her sleeping right next to me.
Nice. She's put in a big morning of work, and now she's like, I
She's
need a
very
nap.
busy.
That's what I need. a few hours of being awake. What kind of
I
dog
wish
is
I
she?
could live my life like that. She is a Chorky. So she is a Chihuahua, Yorkie, Terrier mix, probably a whole bunch of other things. We adopted her. So she's like 8 pounds and very stubborn, but I love her anyway.
Okay. Are you stubborn?
Yes.
Yeah.
Shocking.
It's like a lot of people, somehow we pick dogs or they pick us that we're like, yeah, we're like similar vibe, similar spirits or something like that.
Yep, that's
Yeah.
totally how it works. People even say that we look alike, which is kind of weird. I don't see that, but I guess apparently we do, which I'm okay with. She's super cute. So
Well, if you send me a photo of Lucy, we'll cut it into the recording.
perfect. What are
What your
you
face is.
grateful for?
Oh, gosh. Well, I mean, you got me thinking about my dog. My dog's, yeah, I'm thankful for Newman. Good old Newman. He's also a
Aw.
lot like me. He's a golden doodle, big, goofy mess. But my wife and I had a first dog when we first got married, and I knew nothing about training animals. And
Mm-hmm.
that dog was a literal and figurative bitch in every sense of the word. It just ran our lives, maybe dislocated my wife's shoulder, would
Oh my
chase after cars and children. And it was all our fault. It's like one of those things like, oh, sorry, we got a dog that's bad. It's like, no, you're a horrible owner. And it reminds me of yeah. So anyway, that dog lived a long time, and we loved it. We loved it. Her name was Journey. And when that dog died, I said to myself, okay, one, if we're ever going to have kids, and two, if we ever want to have friends, we have to do a better job. So I hit the books hard and hired trainers and trained myself, is 99% of it. And then almost gave the dog back one time. It was just almost too much. It almost broke me, but I stuck with it. And we have, and I mean, it sounds like bragging or whatever, but we have the best dog in the neighborhood. Like
Aw.
he's just on a verbal chain, and it was almost all love. It was like a lot of just making sure the dog knew he was safe and providing verbal fences and boundaries for the animal and commands and responsibilities. So I learned a lot through that process. I'm really thankful for my dog because he taught me.
He did. Just like people, we also need to feel safe and have boundaries.
Yeah, it actually taught me a lot about parenting,
Yeah.
because there's lots of different strategies for parenting, and I'm not going to say like what I think is right or wrong. I just thinking um, we do see our daughter in a tremendous number of different social settings and environments where I do see the training that I did with my dog come through in the output. And it sounds funny to compare it, but yeah, being hugged and held and knowing you're safe and knowing where the fences are and all
Hmm.
those basics, play, my dog was a master like frisbee catcher. Like I could wing this
Aw.
thing like 50 yards and he would go get it. And he did that until one day like his stomach flipped and we had to do this surgery and everything. So he lost the ability to play that game. So
Oh my God.
yeah, it's wild. It's another reminder like play is so important and do it while you can. It's like you don't know what you got till it's gone. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Lots of life lessons from animals.
Yeah, there's a book in there somewhere probably. So give us the shameless plug. Tell us what you're doing with GJV consulting and training, and maybe the Beyond Burnout retreat, whatever you want to brag about, all the cool stuff you're doing.
Yeah. So this is always so hard for me.
Yeah, I know.
um, so my
Almost
life
everybody
is
says that
just
too.
really.
Yeah,
It is hard. It's hard for me to talk about myself. So, but I do want to, because I hope that what I have gone through can inspire other people to not go through the same thing, or to know that you can live your dream life too. So I know that sounds cheesy, but I was doing a training a couple weeks ago, and somebody put in the chat and they were like, I am so jealous of you that it seems like you're just always on vacation and always traveling. I'm like, well, I worked hard to get here, but you can too. Like, I truly never thought that as a social worker, I could be doing what I'm doing. So
Mm.
I had a group practice. I was in private practice. I had worked a lot of really difficult jobs before that in child protective services and as a victims advocate, which is why I went into private practice in the first place. I grew a group practice to 7 figures, which I, again, never thought I'd be able to do that. And then I woke up one morning and I was like, I fucking hate this. And this is not what I want to do. Um, and so I decided to sell it. And I was actually approached first. So I sold it. And that was in December 2021. And I totally done with all of that as of December 2022. And I decided to retire from therapy. And now, because of my own burnout and everything that I've gone through, I am doing the Beyond Burnout retreat. So we are going to be in Belize in January 2024, the 25th through the 30th. And we are going to dig really a lot deeper in how we can move through burnout, the tools and techniques that we need to use on a daily basis through nervous system regulation. There's going to be lots of fun, but also meditation. I'm also a certified sound healer, so we'll be doing some of that. And the resort is right on the McCall River in San Ignacio, so it's beautiful. I just actually did a site visit there a couple weeks ago, and I am just so excited and so thankful to be able to do that. So that's part of what I do. And the other part of what I do is training, speaking, as you know, consulting and coaching on with therapists and with anybody really on how to prevent burnout, how to scale your business, and how to sell your business.
Huge. Okay.
Just
You
a
said
couple of
we're
things.
just, just a few things. Yeah. Mostly it's like vacation life, except for the 90 hours that you work.
Exactly. And I try and do those in Costa Rica or Belize or somewhere else if I
Mm.
can.
I've got a friend trying to get me to Costa Rica, and I've never been, but that's on my short list. But you
You
said
will
we're
love
going
it.
to Belize, and it made me think, oh, I am I going? That'd be
Yeah,
nice.
you're coming with me,
Yeah.
Steve.
Like, that's so nice of you. I invite you on my podcast. You take me to Belize. This is a fair deal.
It's a mutual thing.
I mean, maybe I will buy a ticket. I was on your website and like clicking around, and like there's the call to action there. I'm like, well, what if I did click through? I've experienced
There's
burnout.
yeah,
Go
go ahead.
ahead. No, no, go ahead. There's what?
I was just going to say, like, if you're listening to this and you're wondering, because I think a lot of people, when they think of retreats, also, they think of like it's only for women. This is co ed. So I already have a couple of men signed up who it's going to be good. So just saying, there's
Oh,
space for you.
interesting. Interesting. I didn't put that together that it would be more of a like a female demographic that would go for something like this, but it looks amazing to me. It looks fun. And I've burned out for sure in my career at different points. And one of them was at a software as a service company, very startup mode. It was very fun,
Mhm.
incredibly exciting culture, and exciting product we were building at the time. And you can just get caught up in the work. It's like all of a sudden I'm working and responding to emails on Saturdays and Sundays and nights and mornings, and extending myself to the point that it just I couldn't sustain it. What talk a little bit about your experience with burnout.
Yeah. So the first time that I was burnt out but didn't know it was when I was working as a caseworker in child protective services. And that was just kind of the culture there. So I didn't really know anything else. It was also like my first big girl job after I got my master's, and everybody worked a ton. Everybody always had their phones on. it was normal to go in on the weekends and see other people writing their court reports. So I just thought that that's like what you do as a good social worker. You're supposed to always be on and answering and all of those things. But it was making me sick. At the end, my hair was falling out. I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. I'd gained a ton of weight. I couldn't sleep. I was having like digestive issues. And now looking back, I know that that was burnout. But at that point, I didn't know that. And I also kind of felt stuck because I thought I only have a master's. I don't have my license yet. Nobody else will hire me. Where else am I going to find a job where I can have the flexibility? Even though looking back, I didn't really have that much flexibility. But at the time, I thought I did. And my supervisor quit with no notice. And when she did that, it was like, okay, well, if she can do it, she's been here for 20 years, then I'm going to leave too.
Yeah.
So I did find a better job, a much easier job that I actually really loved. I was working for Humana as a care manager, an in-home care manager.
Hmm.
But they were doing reduction in workforce. So I knew that my time was limited after I'd been there for about, I think it was there for like 2 or 3 years. And a colleague of mine was going into private practice. And I was like, well, maybe I want to do that. Working for myself sounds fun. That's literally how I started my practice. So I did that. And because of the niche that I had, I grew really quickly. And a Zumba student of mine actually suggested I hire somebody. And again, I had like those same thoughts of like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do this. I'm a social worker. I'm not like someone's boss. I'm not an entrepreneur. But I figured it out because I was seeing like over 30 clients a week in their homes. And that went really well. And it just kind of took off from there. But it grew really quickly. And I just made some poor decisions looking back. And those are the things now that I help other people make sure that they don't do. We just grew too fast. I would sometimes hire out of desperation, really, because I needed people because we had so many clients who needed help who maybe weren't the best fit. And I didn't have good boundaries for myself. I hadn't done the deeper work on myself and my people pleasing and things that I needed to change. And so I just ended up being overextended and really resentful. And I just knew after I'd already been in this place for a couple of years that not only was running the practice not for me anymore and burning me out, but therapy was too. And I didn't realize how much I was taking on from my clients. And I've also been diagnosed with ADHD kind of recently. And I think that that played a lot into it too, that I was masking a lot and didn't really understand about myself and how I work. So now I've done a ton of work to make this schedule and this life that really supports me.
Good for you.
Thanks.
Your group practice reminds me of my first dog. It's like
Yes, it's totally the same.
I'm resentful and you're hurting me.
Yep,
Yeah.
totally.
You mentioned you kind of came to hate it. Let's talk about the pain and the problem so that we can kind of bridge to all your learnings. And what did you hate about it? What did you find yourself kind of loathing as you got into it once you, because you overcame imposter syndrome, you overcame a lot of things. So kudos to you for just doing it, but there's always this idea of like games and like how the games we play in life,
Yeah.
and for me, I see it over and over again where people do it in threes. So the first time they're playing a game and they don't even know they're in the game, and then the second time they play, they know they're in the game, but they lose badly. And
Hmm.
then the third time they play the game, they're like, I know how this ends. And when you know how it ends, then you know how to begin. So it sounds like you've gone through all of that, like you've leveled up. So talk about kind of what were you feeling and kind of the dark moments there.
Yeah, I think the darkest parts of that was the apathy. And I always get really nervous when I say this. I like don't want anybody to like file a grievance against me or something, but it's true. And these are the things that need to be talked about is that I really didn't care. I was in session with clients and I would be looking at the clock and I would be like, oh, it's 12:31. How are we going to do this for another 29 minutes? What am I going to talk about? Like, I can't hear this story anymore. I didn't care about my business at the end. I was like, don't care. Just like, I can't. I am tired of repeating the same shit. I just, if somebody gives me $1, they can have this whole thing. Like, that is just how over it I was. And it's because I didn't put good things in place and good boundaries and better systems. And I did towards the end, which actually started to help. But at that point, I had already made the decision that like this wasn't for me anymore. Um, and some of that was just not delegating appropriately. And so that's always a big thing I talk about with my coaching and consulting clients. And you can't do everything. And so I actually had this conversation with someone yesterday because she's having a hard time delegating and she's a group practice owner, a pretty large group practice, and she is still doing way too much. And it just reminds me of me. And I'm like, what are the things that you do that somebody else could do at 80% and it would be fine? Because it's never going to be 100% if you're not doing it. So what could be 80% and it will be okay so that you can let go of that. And I did start to learn that lesson towards the end, but there's also things that you can't delegate as a business owner. It's always going to be on you at the end of the day. And so some of those things I just couldn't deal with anymore or I didn't want to. I had a really hard time like managing staff, just not good at that. I am very hands off, which is not great as far as leadership goes. In some cases it can be, but in some cases it can't be. And so I just had a really like delegative leadership style where I'm like, here you go, just do your thing. And people would take advantage of that or they wouldn't do what they were supposed to do, even though we had had multiple conversations about it. So I didn't like the disciplining. And yeah, just through all of that, I was like, not for me anymore. I love helping other group practice owners make do their thing and grow and scale, but it's not for me.
Hmm. Yeah. Whew. Yeah.
A lot
There's
of stuff there, huh?
That's a lot. That's a lot there. I don't know if we have enough time.
I
Um,
know.
uh, no, that's awesome. It's thought provoking, is what it is. So I'm just trying to kind of figure out where to start, and I guess where I would start is two places. One is that it's really encouraging to me as somebody who has this little startup business that I'm working on, and for you to talk about, so, whether it's people pleasing or sort of a laissez-faire, hands-off kind of marketing or management style,
Hmm.
I can fall into those buckets at times. And so to see somebody succeed is really encouraging in spite of what you yourself might look at as a weakness or a failing or something like that. And it's really smart to delegate. Of course, I love your 80% rule. um, One, just because it stops high performers from looking for perfection with their next
Yeah.
hire. I had to make my first hire this year with a fractional business development support person, and she's amazing. Like, she's awesome. I've just had time in the game, so I just know a lot of people and have a network, and it takes time to build that up. And
Hmm.
you can't you just can't rush it. You just have to give people time to build that network up and
Yeah.
play the long game. So what was something you delegated or you like took off your plate that when you help other practices, their eyes kind of open to what they might be able to delegate first? Like, are there some common trends or common systems that you plug in?
I look at the things that you, as the business owner, like you don't need to be doing. So for me, the first thing that I delegated, and this is from the very, very beginning when I started my practice, was bookkeeping. I get a lot of people who are just starting their private practice and they're trying to do it on their own. And I'm like, Why do you want to do that? Are you a bookkeeper? Are you good with numbers? Because I fucking suck at it. And I don't want to know. Like, I just want somebody to like give me the P&L and tell me. Like, I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
So, and even some like larger practices still are like, yeah, I do that. I'm like, no, that's, we have people who do that for us and we pay them and we're happy to do that.
Yeah.
So, that's a really big one. I think just the I called this an assistant clinical director, but some people will have like a clinical supervisor or an admin. But those like little things that take time throughout the day, you don't need to be doing that. You don't need to be checking people's calendars. Have your admin do that. Have your clinical supervisor do that. I had my assistant clinical supervisor like checking people's notes, signing off on people's notes if we needed to do that. He would do some onboarding for me. So things that can, and even onboarding, you could just record a video of yourself and, have the new person watch it. But yeah, there are just like a lot of little things as a business owner that just kind of add up in time. When you take a look at it and do some like task analysis, it's like I spent 2 hours of my day on like, I don't know, responding to random emails. Like your admin could do that. If people are reaching out to you for marketing or like scheduling, or we want to have you do this talk here or whatever, like your admin can manage all of those things so that you can do the things that you enjoy doing, hopefully.
Hmm. Yeah. And I don't know what you recommend, but you can get virtual admins, fractional virtual
Yep.
admins that will do it for 2 hours every morning for you, and kind of right size the budget. But the people who come into my inbox with an admin or an assistant seem like, more often than not, uh, pretty productive people. It's
Yes.
like they got their stuff together. I'm always a little bit impressed. Like, okay, yeah, happy to work through an assistant. And then accounting, yeah. I mean, anything with a spreadsheet. I love to geek out on analytics, and
Hmm.
I do not love to geek out on building the spreadsheet of all the
Right.
things, whether it's
Yes.
accounting or project management. Like, just
No.
get to the fine, like, just show me. And so then I can
Yep.
start to vision, then I can start to build for the future. Not my strength. So while you're talking, I'm noting like, oh, yeah, I should do those things sometime.
I'm the same way. I like to look at the spreadsheet and see the final product and
Hmm.
understand, where some of the business is coming from or the streams of income and blah blah blah. But I don't want to be the one to build it out because I'm not good at that. So I know that the things that I'm not good at, somebody else should do for me.
Totally. Yeah. And they'll probably do 80% of what you could do, or maybe, in my case, a lot better,
Me too.
Yeah. But I do struggle with like holding on. I don't know what it is. Like, I was competitive athlete for a long time and high performer, and so it's hard to delegate. It's hard to, there's something, I don't know. It might be my ego. It might be, um, a combination of things. Fear of failure, sort of masked as protection or
Hmm.
something like that. Like, I'm working through that idea because, like you said, when you, sure, you made some hires, to meet the demand and maybe rushed some of those, but I do firmly believe, and curious what you think about, um, the logarithmic or exponential opportunities we get when we surround ourselves with a team of people who are building something together, rather than, the solo person out there running. It's
Hmm.
like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together, is the quote. But what do you think about that when it comes to kind of the solopreneur, single, person company versus, some of the gains that you saw when you had people around you?
That is a really good perspective because I also think that even though maybe some of those hires were rushed and maybe not the best for me, I think that they still brought value to my business and to our team. And so we still, I'm thinking of one of them in particular who maybe was a challenge for me to work with as far as like the expectations that I had, but she also had amazing she worked really well with our clients. So she had been working with older adults her whole career. And that's somebody who I really needed. And the clients really loved her. And so that's always amazing, right? Like we want our clients to have a good experience and to be around people that they trust and are safe with. And then, they go back and they tell the referral source, like, I have this amazing therapist from this company. And that just continues that way. So even though there were some challenges and difficulties, I always think that there are opportunities also. And then she got to be at a place which, even though it didn't work out in the end, she even told me, like, I'm grateful for this. I am around people who I can learn from because we did a lot of training and case consultation and supervision. And so she really valued that too. And even now, as somebody who is a solopreneur, I still value collaboration because community is and connection are one of my really big values. So I'm alone, but I love working with other people. I love building relationships. That's how I built my business. I didn't even have a website for like the first couple of years. And so somebody the other day said, like, going into doctors' offices to market your practice is like modern day vacuum salesman. And I was like, well, it worked for me. I've also done consulting for mental health startups recently, and I still did that. And that's how we got a lot of our contracts. So I am really big on relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's fascinating. So it was just, you would literally like cold call into practices or into doctors' offices as a way to grow, because that was my next question, is like, how did you grow this thing from a marketing standpoint? And sorry,
Yeah.
1 second, this is like a little imperfect wabi sabi moment, but my charger needs to be plugged in. 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, now we won't
We're back.
I won't disappear in 5 minutes.
It's just me talking.
Take it away.
So yeah, that is what I did in the beginning. I had a psychology today when it was just me, and I just made like flyers and rack cards, and I Googled uh, primary care offices that accepted Medicare because I took Medicare. And there was a really big need for that. And I knew that. And I just went in there with some cookies and I went to the front desk and said, I'm a therapist in the community. You see Medicare clients, you could refer them to me. And then I would ask if they had like a social worker on staff that I could talk to. Or, I would sometimes do like a lunch and learn and ask to schedule a lunch for them. And that kind of depends because they usually expect it to be catered. So just if you're like going to try this, just know that. So
Yeah.
if you are going into an office with 30 providers, just think about that. But that's how I got all of my referral sources and clients at first. And then I would get calls from somebody else and they would be like, oh, Amanda at the social worker at this hospital told me about you. And it just kind of snowballed from there. And then, of course, eventually as I grew, I did have a website, and my friend who is an incredible SEO specialist built it for me. And so that also really helped, but it was nice having both. And because I did have both, even when in the slowest of slow times, we were never hurting for clients because we had a specific niche and I had already done all of that groundwork.
Nice. Yeah, I used to be in sales and didn't love it. Like talk therapy kind of rerouted me out of like the sales track. It did feel kind of forced,
Mhm.
and now that I'm running this business, like I have to do it all the time, which
Yeah,
is kind of the irony.
I hate it too.
So I'm like, oh, here I like totally walked away and then like did a full 360. And I'm like back on this path. But there's a
Mhm.
difference because for me, this is just maybe me or a certain characteristic or trait, but I don't mind it at all in this form because um, while I dislike it too, but I don't mind doing it because or I like it. What am I saying? So, okay, this is what it is I dislike it, but I find a way to do it consistently anyway in a way that's profitable because of sort of the skin in the game that I have running the business and how it focuses me on urgency and just doing what it takes to get it done. And that motivates me much more than the previous games I was in. So that was a really clumsy way of going around that. But, I've always shocked how, despite the marketing that we do, it's the one-to-one conversations and relationships that, in the next week or the next month, they'll come back to me and say, oh, do you know this person? Do you know that person? Can I help you with this? And that's magic, because that's really
Mm-hmm.
how this community has grown over the past 7 or 8 years. Is it's not mass marketing. Our email marketing list performs extremely well and drives transactions and mass communication, but really it's like one to one.
Yep. I totally agree with that because I do still hate it, but now I do exactly what you said. I do it in a way that works for me, that I feel comfortable with. And so that's doing really things like this. Like, I love being on video and making social media content, and that is where I feel really comfortable. And that works because I was on a podcast called Clearly Clinical like a couple of weeks ago, and my last 3 consulting clients all came from that podcast. They were like,
Whoa.
I heard you and I loved what you had to say, and I'm like, where do I pay you and start?
Hmm.
So it works.
Well, we have at least 12 subscribers on YouTube, so hopefully,
Yes.
hopefully half of them will flock to your door right now. Like, oh my gosh, we want to hire Gabrielle.
12 is more than 0. So
That's true. That's very true. Yeah, 1 minute in heaven is better than no minutes in heaven.
yes.
Nice. Well, talk a little bit more about the Beyond Burnout retreat in Belize, and sort of like, do you have your speakers lined up for that, or do you do the whole workshop? Talk about some of the format and what to expect.
Yeah, so I went on a retreat last year and I didn't really know what to expect, and it completely transformed how I work and really helped lead me on a different, more aligned path. And so that's why I'm doing this, because I'm so passionate about that. And because I think the talk about burnout is changing, which is good, because when we would talk about it, when I was a social worker, a caseworker back like 10 years ago, it was, like self-care, like get a massage. And, we put lavender essential oils on everybody's desk so that you can be calm. And those are good things. Those are important. But nobody really explained to me like the deeper part of it, the deeper work that needed to be done. And so that is why I'm doing this. We're going to really go deep into using some expressive art stuff, nervous system regulation. I have special meditations that I use and that go with my sound healing. And it's just me running it, because that's how I'm doing this. And it's not, don't come to this and expect to be scheduled back to back. Like, I have it so that we are probably going to be doing some stuff together in the mornings because we're in the jungle and it's hot. So we'll be doing, 2 hours of work together in the morning. And then the rest of the day, I want you to have time to imprint and integrate and enjoy where you are. So if you are active and you want to go cave tubing, you can do that, or you can just sit in the infinity pool, which is where I'll be for the rest of the afternoon, or you could take a nap, or you can go for a hike or do a chocolate making tour. Like, it's kind of like a create your own adventure, but we'll be together and connecting and integrating all kinds of yummy stuff together.
Wow, that sounds epic. Is this like a inclusive resort, or is this kind of luxury roughing it with the like? What's the backdrop? What's the resort like?
It's called Sweet Songs Jungle Lodge, and I stayed there actually because I did a site visit there, but I've stayed at the the company that owns it is called Mui Ono, and I've stayed at other resorts of theirs too. It's a little rustic, but it is all inclusive. You get 3 meals a day and a snack. Snacks are important. And you have a nice room. It has air conditioning. It's very comfortable. You can flush the toilet paper, which you can't do everywhere in Costa Rica. So when I was like, okay, it's not that rustic. And It's an eco lodge. Moi Ono donates back to the Belizean community with every reservation, which I love. And all of the food is sourced from their farms. So everything is organic, farm to table. There's no dinner menu. They write the dinner menu on a chalkboard every night based on what they have, but they're able to accommodate any food stuff because I'm have a gluten allergy and I'm a pescatarian, and I had no problems the entire time I was there. It's amazing. And every morning, this is my favorite part. They put out fruit every morning on this little like table, and the toucans come and eat it. And you're like just having coffee, and there's a toucan right in front of you eating papaya. It's amazing.
Like, where am I right now?
Yes, like this is definitely not America, and I would like to stay here forever with
Yeah.
the toucans.
Eating the papaya while you hold your piping hot coffee in the infinity pool.
Yes. Exactly. That's the dream.
It's the dream. You're living the dream. You're inspiring. And I would want to encourage you that, those like, some of those tough lessons and, the things considered maybe loss or struggle in your life, it's clear that you have the experience and education because you've walked through that fire. So now you're being able to help people who are maybe right in the middle of it, or
Yes.
not even sure they're aware of what their challenges are. And so to be able to come in and help people who are doing amazing work, I mean, typically it's this whole heart driven industry of caring for people and their minds and their behaviors. For somebody like you to come in and say, man, I want to help you, and I can, and I've lived
Hmm.
this, and there's a way forward. That's inspiring and so net positive for the value you're bringing to the world. So I just like celebrate that for you. And I'm sure you've like come to that awareness already, but it's so obvious as you tell your story. And we kind of want everything to just go up and to the right all the time, right? Like we
Yeah.
want just wins, no losses. But I'm telling you that, like, as I learn to embrace the wavelengths of life, which everything that's healthy is that way. It's like the ocean or sound or the way light
Hmm.
travels or anything, water, our heartbeat, everything, our lungs and our lives. So, there's this concept of like you draw the bow back, in order
Yeah.
to shoot the arrow. And it's along those lines. Like we don't want it to feel down. We don't want to be in the valley, and that feels bad. And we have to live with that. But it could just mean that, man, you're just about ready to launch. And it sounds like that's
Yes.
what you did.
That gave me chills. Thank
Mm.
you. And I think that is what I did and it is hard to see it, right? When you're in the midst of it and it just, I had to make that conscious effort and I still have to. But because I went through all of that, it has brought me to this place of doing something that is more aligned with what I love to do and how I can really help people. And I don't have to do that in one-on-one therapy, which is what I thought was the only way for me before. Um, but when I was in Oregon, I was also doing a site visit for a retreat I'm co-hosting next April, and we did a ropes course. And I'm kind of afraid of heights, but I was like, it'll be fine. I'm just gonna like push through it. I'll be okay. It's not that scary.
Yeah.
And it was that scary. And for me, and I'm clipped in
Yeah.
and I'm in the trees and I'm going across literally a tightrope. I don't even know, maybe like 20 feet, but
Yeah.
it was terrifying. And I was like 70 feet off the ground and I'm going really slow. And when I was in the middle of it, I started crying and I was like, I'm really afraid. Like, I can't do this. But I didn't have a choice. There's nowhere else to go. So I got over and I had never been so happy to be on that platform. And it reminds me of this. Like when you are in the middle of it and you're crying and you're scared and you're upset, you can't see where you're going. But when you get to that other side, like you're so grateful that you were able to move through that.
Hmm. Yeah. And the way that fear just takes over. Um,
Yes.
and I mean, just a quick, we're coming kind of the top of the hour, but just a quick, just to circle it back to dogs. Um,
Yes.
if we could just talk about my dog for another few
I
minutes
would
here.
love to.
No, we we were outside one day, and there's this hot air balloon festival in town. It's beautiful, and they like to like dip down into the neighborhood and kind of, you know, you can wave at the people floating by, and it's cool. And my dog was out there with us, and this hot air balloon, you know, kind of dips down, and then as they do, they like put the fire on, you know, to fill up the balloon again with heat to get it back up into the sky, and it makes that kind of roaring, you know, sound.
Mm.
And so we're still like watching up in the sky. Well, my dog thinks the sun is falling to earth, like in a hot
Oh.
fireball flame round thing. He's like, oh my gosh. And so he just runs, he just darts. And when we look back, we didn't even know he had run, but there's no dog there. And there's a there was no way to communicate to our dog that this is okay. This is something you may not be able to comprehend right now, but it's safe, and it's actually kind of fun. He thought, okay, it's over. And what a bummer that he left us. You know, he didn't bark or anything. He's just like, I'm out of here. But
Yeah.
that's what it. And we had to drive around the whole neighborhood. We thought we lost him, and
Oh. Oh my God.
then I'm driving down a street and I see a glass door to somebody's house, and my dog is in there just like looking out. I'm like, oh my gosh, we found him. So it had a happy ending. But you know, whether you're at the point of no return on the rope bridge and you're freaking out and crying, it's how do you, because you've done a lot of work with the nervous system and the polyvagal theory, and like tell us something about what you can do to overcome that freak out moment.
You got to lean in. So, and nobody wants to do that. And that is actually, I was thinking of that when I was up there too. I was like, my my friend was calling me the polyvagal princess because I talk about it so much. And I'm like, you're the polyvagal princess. You got to do it. You got to do the work that you tell everybody else about. And that is what I did. I had to lean in. I had to feel it. I had to cry. And I said, like, what am I afraid of? Like, what is this trying to tell me? And I just had to be present with it. And I had to hold that very intense fear and anxiety and emotion. And when I did that and I didn't push it away, I was like, okay, I'm here. I'm safe. I've like acknowledged the fear. I've acknowledged what I'm afraid of. And I am coming back to the moment. Like I noticed my breathing. I started, focusing on that and just being really present and grounded and being like, just move your foot a little bit, move it a little bit to the right and just keep shuffling. Don't think about anything else but moving that right foot until you feel solid ground. And that's what
Hmm.
I did. And the other part of this story is that once I did that, I said, yes, I never have to go back over that ever again. I'm fine. But the problem was from where the platform was, where I was at, the other two ways to go were much harder and much scarier. And so my only way to go back was to go back over that fucking tightrope again. And I couldn't do it. And so
Yeah.
that was the other part of this is that I asked for help and
Mm.
I started crying again. I was like, I can't do it. And so the instructor came up and we went over together. So
Mm.
that's the other piece is to ask for help when you need it. Cause I know that that's also really hard and it was hard for me, but I was like, I need help to be able to do this again. I can't do it on my own.
That's huge. To your point about collaboration and having people around you to support you and what you can get done, and no shame, right? Like in asking for help, you know, like
Hmm.
that's part of what we're wrestling here with on the mental health kind of awareness side of things is the stigma of asking for help. Sometimes it comes out as a symptom of our challenge, like what it
Yeah.
just happened with you was like, oh man, I don't want to go back ever again, and I don't want to ask for help either, but I'm going to ask for help, and good for you, because there's a stigma associated with that too, like the solution sometimes, whatever that
Hmm.
is. That's amazing. You know, I don't have a fear of heights. So it's easy for me to listen to that story with a little bit of judgment, actually, like, well, come on, like it's just a
Hmm.
rope bridge, you know?
Yeah.
And that's so lame of me that I even have still that echo. So I'm like, I'm speaking it out right now because I just noticed a flicker of it. Like, come on, it's not that hard. It is that hard for you.
Hmm.
It is that hard for you. And
Hmm.
there's no discounting that. And I have literally 100 scenarios that I would do the same thing in, but it just happens not to be a rope bridge.
I mean, and that's totally fine. Like, you have to acknowledge that. And I even had that same thought too when I was on the ground. And even now, when I'm looking back on it, I'm like, it really wasn't that bad. Why were you so upset? But that is like the negative self talk that I have. And that has, not just in this instance, but in a lot of other instances. When I sold my practice, I had similar thoughts. When I stopped doing therapy, I had similar thoughts. And those are just, parts of me that are maybe trying to protect something, or that maybe need a little bit of attention. So it's important that we acknowledge those things and not just try and push them away.
Yeah. Attention, and maybe to come full circle, love, right? Like, the way that we can embrace ourselves as if we were somebody else, like if
Yeah.
we can get to that observer state where we can talk about ourselves. And as an aside, it's so fascinating to watch people commonly struggle to brag about themselves because it's socially not what we're trained to do. You kind of
Hmm.
can get slapped down a little bit for that. But I don't know. There's like a place for it. Like you can swing the pendulum too far. And I find that most of us swing the pendulum too far to say, I don't know that I can really brag about what I'm doing.
Hmm.
And I get the benefit of not having to step into those shoes. I'm always asking everybody else, hey, why don't you go on that rope
Yes.
bridge, huh? Yeah, looks high. Um, but I don't know where I'm going with that thought, but
It's
oh
hard.
yeah.
And it's funny because I also talked about this with my therapist like 2 weeks ago. And I was like, I have such a hard time being confident. And even though I've done all these things and people say I'm successful, like I don't really see it that way. And I'm afraid I'm going to turn into this like egotistical asshole who is super self-centered. And she was like, what do you think the odds of that actually happening are? And I'm like, I guess probably not very much, but still, that's the fear that I have.
What if she said, well, you're kind of already that. So
I
I mean,
know. Then I'd be like, ooh, ooh, I need a new therapist. I need to be coddled.
your therapist needs a therapist now. No, you're definitely not that. That was a joke. You're delightful to talk to and to get to know better. I'm stoked to see you in person in September at the Mental Health Marketing
Yay.
Conference. You're going to speak there. Thank you for bringing your expertise there. And last question is a fun one. Tell us something that you're reading or listening to. It could be a podcast or a record or a book, something you don't have to have completed it, but just what's some kind of content you're taking in these days.
I just finished a book that people have mixed feelings about, and it's by is it Cicero or Sincero? She's a coach, and the book is called "You're a Badass at Making Money." And so people have strong feelings about it because it's like not really trauma informed, and it's really not can feel dismissive of mental health and trauma. But that's not why I was listening to it. I was listening to it specifically for money mindset help. And it really has changed the way that I think about myself and how I put myself out there and my own limiting beliefs. So, you could take it or leave it. Some of it is kind of cheesy because it is coaching, but it has helped me think about things from a different perspective and from a different way. And I have noticed that when I take in some of those things and some of the things that I had felt like ashamed about, and I've looked at them and I've worked through it, I can see that the shifts are coming in my business and my life. So I really enjoyed it.
Sometimes when that sounds interesting. I'm going to pick it up. Sometimes when I read a book, it's almost like difficult to pick out a specific point. It's like it just goes into the soup and then it starts to be activated. Is it possible for you to pull out like an idea or a concept that really resonated with you, or something you're applying from that book?
Yeah, so one of the things that she talks about is like, you are not greedy or a bad person because you want to make money. And I think that has been difficult as a social worker. We've always, at least for me, in like the groups that I've run in, not now, but in the past, that's
Yeah.
always kind of been the messaging is like, you need to help people and you should be happy with your $30,000 a year and you'll just have to be broke forever. And I had already started doing work on that, but the way she frames it in the book is really helpful that like, it doesn't make you a bad person to want money and you can even do more with your life and help more people if you have that. So, it's helped change my thought patterns and my mindset around that.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. And for the context of that book. That's helpful. I didn't know the background, but so I'll read it with two open eyes. But Gabrielle, it's been a pleasure to talk with you. Thanks for coming on to the Boost. And again, excited to see you in September. But I guess we'll wrap there. Hope you have a good one.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
For sure.